What would you do? The narrator's voice trembled with emotion, if you came home early one day and saw the person you loved hurting a child who trusted your home as a safe place. The camera slowly zooms in on a man frozen at his doorstep, a bag in one hand, disbelief in his eyes. What this millionaire did next shocked everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more emotional and life-changing stories that remind us humanity still exists. Jonathan Reeves was a man who had everything: wealth, fame, and a mansion on the hill that people drove by just to admire. To the world, he was the perfect husband to the beautiful socialite, Catherine Reeves. They had the picture-perfect life, charity galas, smiling photographs, and a staff that ran the house like clockwork. But sometimes, even the perfect picture hides cracks invisible to the camera. He wasn't supposed to be home that day. His flight from New York had been cancelled, and instead of staying overnight, he took an earlier plane home, hoping to surprise Catherine. He walked through the long marble corridor, suitcase rolling softly behind him, smiling at the thought of seeing her face light up. But what he heard as he reached the hallway froze his smile in an instant. A loud thud, a small cry, then Catherine's voice, sharp, cruel, dripping with venom. "You filthy little brat, you think you can touch my things? You think you belong here?" Jonathan's heart began to race. He turned the corner, and what he saw shattered the image he had of his wife forever. On the floor, curled up beside the kitchen island, was a small girl, barely 8 years old, sobbing quietly. Her cheek was red, her arm bruised. Towering over her, her expensive heels clicking against the tiles, was Catherine, his wife, kicking the child's leg and pointing furiously at a broken vase. "You people are all the same," Catherine spat, "ungrateful and dirty. I should have known better than to let your mother work here." Jonathan dropped his suitcase. "Catherine." His voice echoed through the hall, filled with shock and rage. She spun around, her face pale as if she'd seen a ghost. "Jonathan, you're home early." He walked forward slowly, his eyes not leaving the trembling girl on the floor. "What did you just do?" he whispered, his voice dangerously calm. "She broke my vase, Jonathan. That's a one of a kind. She's a child," he shouted, his voice cracking. "And you kicked her." The little girl flinched, trying to crawl away, but Jonathan knelt beside her gently. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." He touched her arm carefully and looked into her tear-streaked face. "Where's your mom?" The child sniffled. "Mom is in the laundry room. Miss Catherine told her not to come out." Jonathan stood, his expression hardening. For the first time, Catherine saw something in her husband's eyes she had never seen before: disgust. "Stay right here," he said coldly. "We're going to fix this." He opened the laundry room door and found Grace, the maid, a quiet, kind woman in her early 30s, sitting on the floor, her eyes red. She stood up instantly when she saw him, panicked. "Sir, I'm so sorry," she began, "please don't fire me. My daughter just..." Jonathan raised a hand. "Grace, stop. None of this is your fault. Pack your things, you and your daughter are leaving right now." Catherine gasped. "What? You can't be serious, Jonathan. You're firing her, after what her child did." He turned to her slowly. "No, Catherine, you're the one leaving." Her jaw dropped. "Excuse me, I said," he repeated, his voice steady as steel, "you're leaving my house. I can't live with someone who abuses a child whose only crime was existing in your world." Tears of shock filled Catherine's eyes. "You're choosing them over me." Jonathan looked at the little girl, who was now clutching her mother's hand, trembling. "No," he said quietly. "I'm choosing what's right." He called his lawyer that night. Within days, divorce papers were on the table. The news spread quickly: the millionaire philanthropist who divorced his wife over a maid's daughter. Tabloids called him insane. Socialites whispered that he'd lost his mind. But Jonathan didn't care. He moved Grace and her daughter, Lila, into a small guest house on the property until they could find a place of their own. When he visited them the next morning, he found Lila sitting on the porch, holding a small sketchbook. "Did you draw that?" he asked, sitting beside her. She nodded shyly. "It's you," she said softly, pointing to a sketch of a man with a kind smile. "You came like a hero in the movies." Jonathan's throat tightened. "I'm no hero," he said. She looked up. "You were to me." Over the months, their bond grew deeper. Grace worked with dignity, and Jonathan ensured Lila got into one of the best schools in the city. But one evening, as Lila showed him a new drawing, she said something that broke him and healed him at the same time. "My dad left before I was born," she whispered. "I used to think men only hurt people. But you showed me not all men are bad." Jonathan turned away to hide the tears in his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt peace, not the peace that comes from wealth or reputation, but the peace that comes from doing the right thing. Years later, when people spoke about Jonathan Reeves, they didn't talk about his business empire or his luxury cars. They talked about how he stood up for a child when no one else would. How he rebuilt a broken family he didn't have to save. And how sometimes, the richest man is the one who gives love where it's needed most. The screen fades to black, and the narrator's voice returns softly. True wealth isn't in what we own, but in what we protect. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you believe kindness can still change the world.